that was fighting for gay rights, and people were killed.
Nobody was killed at Stonewall.
Nobody was killed.
The year 2020 had the entire world upside down, mostly because of the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, the growing tensions of the Black Lives Matter movement, and one of the most important election years of the United States history. The franchise of RuPaul's Drag Race was significantly affected by that year as well. So I thought it would be interesting to take a look back at the chaos of 2020 and explore the timeline of events that transpired in relation to Drag Race and what it would mean for the evolution of the franchise. But before we start, this video is sponsored by Adam and Eve, which is the #1 source for all types of adult toys that are designed to give you immense pleasure. The good thing about their products is that you can enjoy it whether you're single, in a relationship, or maybe you're just bored and you want to spice up things in your life. Right now, you can get 50% off your first item plus free shipping if you use code GREENGAY. What's even better is that the products you order are sent to you in very discreet packaging. So if you're worried about anyone finding your special new adult toy, then your mind can rest easy. To top it all off, my favorite aspect about shopping at Adam and Eve is that they donate 20% of their profits to organizations that help fight the spread of HIV around the world, which is a very nice gesture on their part. Again, right now you can get 50% off your first item, including free shipping, by clicking the link in the description and use code GREENGAY at checkout. Now, let's begin. To start off, let's go back in time. Picture it. It's the night of December 31st, 2019. This is exciting because just a couple weeks ago, the first season of Drag Race UK crowned the Vivienne as their winner, concluding the first successful international season hosted by RuPaul. And now you've just rung in the new year 2020, with so many things to look forward to, such as the anticipation for the announcement of the season 12 queens, which had some really big expectations, especially after season 11 wasn't all that well received. Because after the chaos that it felt to watch 15 queens compete for screen time, production took the critiques of the fans and created a cast with 13 queens, the lowest number we'd seen since season 8 that had 12 queens. Along with that, they gave us a split premiere to get to know the contestants better, which was the first time that they had done that since season 6, sparking a temporary trend in premiere episodes, with season 13 and 14 following split premiere formats too. All in all, season 12 was shaping up to be an amazing season, yet it wouldn't take long before it would have to face one of many obstacles ahead. On January 23rd, 2020, the first promo trailer for season 12 was released to the public. This was also the same day that Wuhan, China was officially placed under quarantine, and the United States reported their first cases of the COVID-19 infection. Despite this, it was still a pretty exciting time for both the queens and fans alike. The reality of the virus hadn't yet affected normal everyday life, so for the next month, the queens would go forward with doing their press tour by doing interviews with entertainment outlets and attending red carpet events, all while the situation with the virus was dramatically worsening with every week that went by. Unlike seasons that would end up airing later on that year, season 12 was sort of the sacrificial lamb of the pandemic. They literally had just begun doing press tours for their season, along with most of the queens already being super booked for months to come, all of which was automatically stripped away from them because of the virus. Like, imagine going to film Drag Race and then spending the next couple months anxiously waiting for your season to air while preparing outfits and content for your future fans, only for all of this to suddenly happen to you. It's thanks to the season 12 queens being the first season affected that the next seasons were able to somewhat adapt to the situation, with queens now elevating what their backgrounds on their Zoom calls would look like and investing in higher quality cameras and microphones. It was essentially the new way of trying to get in touch with the fans, and given social distancing regulations, it's all that they could really afford to do. The first episode of season 12 premiered on February 28, 2020. This episode would be the last one to air before things really began to explode into chaos. Season 12 episode 1 was a jump in quality for the franchise. A split premiere where nobody was eliminated was refreshing, and whoever was the casting director for this season did a really good job, because it's one of the few seasons where every queen really felt completely unique. The promo theme for that year was the American flag, which tied into the upcoming election to try to get people to vote Trump out of office. Some particular slays from this photo shoot includes the outfits of Jada Essence Hall, Gigi Goode, and Brita Filter. So a tradition that had sort of developed over the years was that whenever a new cast of queens was announced, they usually ended up doing a group interview with the Build series YouTube channel, and the season 12 queens were no different, who also partook in an interview hosted by Ms. Cracker. So in a way, everything was going according to plan. Yet slowly in the horizon, things started to slowly get cancelled. For example, example, the Work the World tour coincidentally had just started its tour through Asia, where the COVID outbreaks were a lot more prevalent at the time. I remember there was a lot of turmoil online emitting from the queens that were part of the cast, since there was a stigma that was slowly rising regarding the seriousness of the virus. Eventually, Work the World would end up canceling the rest of their tour dates indefinitely, as the seriousness of the virus began to skyrocket. By the time the airing of season 12 episode 2 happened, it was already the end of normal life as we knew it. But we did get one last Roscoe's viewing party hours before social distancing caused that to be cancelled too. If you do go back to watch this Roscoe's episode, not only can you see how tense everyone is about the virus, but it was also a couple days after the Sherry Pie scandal had occurred. But we'll get to that later. It felt like from one day to another, the whole world was on lockdown, which was a very challenging time for everyone. But something that we did have while dealing with the uncertainty of the world was to be able to look forward to a new episode of Drag Race every week. During the first months of the pandemic, viewership for the show actually increased, since most people had nothing better to do with their time. I also tend to read a lot of comments from fans, who say that season 12 was the first season that they watched live, or that they began binging Drag Race during the pandemic, which is how they became a fan. I find it sort of cool to see new generations of drag fans find out about the show, because as someone that's followed it for many years, I sometimes wonder how overwhelming it must be to be a new fan of Drag Race and have all of these seasons that you haven't watched. But if you're one of those fans, let me know about your experience in the comments. The reason season 12 is a significant season is because it's yet another marker within the franchise's evolution to what would be the new digital era of drag. It was also sort of bittersweet when we would see queens win prizes to go overseas, only for most international flights to be cancelled for the near future. The financial cost for the pandemic when it came to nightlife performers in general was super devastating. While some people were able to get stimulus checks, many drag queens weren't able to qualify due to their job not being considered a viable occupation. So there was a lot of fundraising events made to try to help people that may be struggling within the community. It was even more saddening to see DragCon Los Angeles get cancelled, as well as the decision that there would be no grand finale or reunion being taped live, and instead it would be occurring via Zoom. Ignoring the aspects of the viewing experience that it meant to not be able to see these queens together in the same room, it was also a taxing experience for the queens themselves. After all, the psychological exhaustion that must have stemmed from the fact that many of them fully thought that after going thousands of dollars in debt, they were going to be able to make up all that money by touring non-stop for the next year. Subsequently, as we all know, Jada Essence Hall has said that she was a last-minute addition to the season 12 cast, which is why it's speculated that she was meant to replace Tamisha Iman, who was originally in the cast of season 12 but had to drop out last minute due to her cancer diagnosis. It also makes sense since both Tamisha and Jada sort of represented the pageant side of the drag world. That being said, out of all the seasons that aired during the pandemic, the season 12 queens were hit the hardest. Particularly, Jada Essence Hall spoke on All Star 7 about how difficult it was to win season 12 from a Zoom call in her apartment, as well as the lack of support that she had from fans as they slowly approached the finale.
And I'm like, if I win this season, so many people saw me and they're like, well, we don't like what she's representing. We don't like her. We don't get her. We don't understand it. And some of y'all have been rocking with me from day one. So many of y'all have been rocking with me from day one. And I think that like, if for me to win would mean that like all of us who dream about stuff, all of us who wish that we could be something else, all of us that wish that we could be more than what we are. You see that happen for somebody, that means that as long as we work hard enough and as long as we believe in what we're doing, it can happen for us. Because the thing is, like they tell you, the American dream is that if you work hard enough, you can have stuff.
I did notice that World of Wonder did try their best to give the season 12 queens their flowers, with later on in the year giving them a Halloween special called Bring Back My Ghouls, hosted by Jada Essence Hall, where we got to catch up with what each of the queens had been doing during the lockdown. Along with that, by the time season 13 began airing, they did a series on the WoW Presents YouTube channel where each queen from season 12 gave a heartfelt message to whichever queen had been eliminated that week. So now that it's been a couple years, it's easy to look back at season 12 and appreciate a lot of its many notable moments. For starters, the first eliminated queen, Dahlia Sin, provided us with a super bitter exit where she didn't bother to thank the judges or give a witty catchphrase. She just stomped off the stage because she was pissed at how things turned out. And I was absolutely living for every second of it. This was also the season where Aiden Zhane became an instant underdog, since most of her runways were extremely simplistic and her personality wasn't all that prevalent in a room filled with queens like Brita Filter, who grew more and more frustrated as the judges seemed to be favoring Aiden's run in the competition while also pushing Brita aside. Which of course brings us into Brita Filter's unfortunate treatment by the fans during the airing of season 12. You might imagine that by the time we were all on lockdown that there would have been more compassion from the fan base in terms of the hate that they would send the queens. Well, needless to say, this was not the case. Brita had a terrible run on season 12 because people didn't like the side that we had seen from her. She was one of the biggest queens from New York City when she entered the show, and consistently spoke about how her status in her community should have given her the tools necessary to succeed in the competition. So it frustrated her that she wasn't doing as good as she expected. What made it worse is that Brita seemed to be channeling her anger towards Aiden Zhane, who arguably had the lowest caliber of drag from the whole cast. There was also the pivotal moment where Aiden Zhane, Brita Filter, and Rock M Sakura were in the bottom 3 for season 12 episode 4, but Ru would decide to save Aiden Zhane from the bottom 2, despite the fact that Aiden had taken a nap while in the workroom, because according to her, she had finished her runway outfits ahead of time and saw absolutely no way of being able to improve the look. This of course was sort of a turning point with the patience that Brita would have for Aiden, but at times it did feel a little bit uncomfortable just how in Brita would go on Aiden, who seemingly never provoked anyone, including the infamous Untucked where almost every queen in the cast seemed to be coming for Aiden. And so here's where things begin to get a little bit more chaotic. Brita would end up having an online feud with none other than Leslie Jones. The context here is that over the past year, Leslie Jones had become popular on Twitter for her live reaction to Drag Race episodes. She had been binging older seasons and many Drag Race fans loved seeing her journey of standing different queens. This would end up leading up to Leslie being invited as a guest judge for season 12, where they had a little moment where they referenced her popularity in giving live reactions on Twitter. Yet as season 12 began airing, Leslie wasn't shy to voice what her actual opinions were and began to really go in on Brita Filter, calling her a bully because of her entitled attitude.
If I would have known Brita was so fucking shady, oh my God, so shady. And you in the big leagues now, bitch. You ain't just in New York. You a shady bitch. I'm sorry. You a shady ass. Just your whole demeanor, yo. If I would have fucking known, I would have let your ass have it. Okay, it's amazing to me how much you talk and how much fucking shade you throw out, and you don't know how to do. You don't know how to dance. You don't know how to do shit. You don't even know how to make your fucking garments, but you talk so much. The winner of RuPaul's Drag Race knows how to do all. Have y'all not watched this motherfucking show? So, like, if you're gonna be on this show, start learning how to sew right now. And I did, if I would have known that she was shady, and I usually can tell when people shady. I usually can tell. Don't be mad because you look like a corn apple, bitch, because nobody figured out what your fucking outfit was. Like, for real, stop defending yourself to these. Yeah, bitch, I took a nap because I was finished with my shit. Like, they getting on my fucking nerves. I don't like people getting bullied. And they are bullying her. I'm sorry. Yeah, see, I didn't know. Let me explain to y'all. I didn't know. I didn't know she was a shady queen. I did not. If I would have known, it would have been a whole different speech to her.
Brita would end up calling out Leslie Jones on Twitter, first with a vague tweet that she ended up deleting, but was quickly followed by a series of tweets where she tagged Leslie and said that she can keep throwing shade all she wants, but that Leslie should turn on the news and understand that this isn't the time to be reading people. She goes on to say that she learned a lot about herself by watching the show, and that she can acknowledge that she had gone in there with way too much confidence, which impacted her ability to stay positive. Again, at this point, Brita had sort of became the villain of the season, so she was barely getting any support from the fans as is. So having a celebrity like Leslie that had just been a guest judge on the show was only fueling the hate online. What made it worse was that Leslie's original response to the tweet was to make a joke by saying that Brita had never been to a library and that she does love her. But as fans kept calling out Leslie for her unfiltered opinions on Twitter, she ended up releasing her own statement about a week later. In it, she said, quote, "Some of y'all don't get what live tweeting is. When I live tweet a show, I'm saying what is happening and I don't lie. and it's not bullying. She adds that all she's really doing is pointing out what's happening on the screen, but that she won't be live tweeting anymore since people don't know how to take it as entertainment, which granted, there was sort of some validity within her statement. While the comments that Leslie would make about Brita on the show were in fact negative, it wasn't any different from what other random fans had been saying online. Yet some fans felt that by Leslie being so unfiltered about her opinions, she was inadvertently validating the hate that other fans had been throwing against Brita. But I'd be curious what you guys think about this particular story. Was Leslie in the right by giving out her honest opinions about the show? Or was Brita in the right to call her out? Needless to say, Leslie would end up stopping her live tweeting era of RuPaul's Drag Race. And by the end of April 2020, Brita made a lengthy post where she said that after her time in quarantine, along with the extensive death threats she's received from fans all season, she's come to the realization that drag isn't fun anymore and that she has decided to quit and take a break. Subsequently, Brita would end up going through a deep depression as her season aired, which she would later talk about in the reunion episode. It's also no secret that the side of Brita that we saw in season 12 was very far from the person that she was like in real life. As fellow New York City queens such as Bob the Drag Queen has said that Brita's portrayal on TV was extremely different from what she had actually built a reputation around in New York City.
Worked so hard on that while you were sleeping.
So one of the bigger dramas of this year that wasn't related to the COVID-19 pandemic was the disqualification of Sherry Pie. As we all know, each episode in season 12 had a disclaimer stating that due to the recent allegations that have come forward against Sherry Pie and her subsequent statement on the matter, the production decided that it would be best if they disqualify her from the competition and banned her from attending the finale and reunion. This subsequently confirmed to many people that Sherry had most likely made it to the top 4 of the season and was poised to be a main presence within the show. It all started when shortly after the airing of season 12 episode 1, one of Sherry Pie's victims had come forward with his story about how Sherry had taken advantage of the fact that he was a struggling actor by pretending to connect him with a fake casting agent by the name of Allison Mosey, which led to a chain of emails that involved very sexually explicit requests, such as the sending of nude pictures and videos, some of which involved some very graphic sexual acts. After this, it didn't take long before other victims began to come forward with their own stories, each with a correlating theme. Allegedly, Sherry Pie would sometimes tell her victims that she knew of a casting agent that could get them a good role on a show, which would lead to email chains as she pretended to be Allison Mosey. Apparently, Sherry was going to very great lengths of keeping up this persona, with sending people whole scripts for fake shows that never even existed. But without getting too into it, some victims shared stories that added extra layers to the situation, such as the persona of Allison Mosey encouraging and allegedly providing the victims with drugs such as steroids, with the excuse that it would enhance their bodies and better them for the TV or movie role that she had pretended they were being considered for. Ultimately, things escalated even more when not only were victims corroborating each other's stories, but we would find out that this had apparently been happening as early as 2013 and as recently as a couple months after Sherry had come back from the filming of season 12. A lot of Ru girls also started to show their support online, including Bob the Drag Queen that was one of the first queens to call for Sherry Pie to be disqualified from the competition. This revealed to the world that Sherry Pie was committing fraud and sexual misconduct by lying to unknown actors that they would be given the role of a lifetime if they did anything that Allison Mosey asked for. This was a big blow to the season. Many felt that VH1 could have potentially scrapped the whole season altogether, since Sherry would end up making it all the way to the finals of season 12. The exposing of Sherry Pie occurred right after the airing of episode 1, and given that season 12 had a split premiere, Sherry's episode wasn't going to happen until the following week. There was a lot of rumors over how the season would have looked like had producers not been forced to edit out as many scenes as possible that included Sherry Pie. For example, it's theorized that Sherry had a heated rivalry with Gigi Good that expanded into the whole run of the competition. Along with that, on season 12 episode 4, when Aiden, Brita, and Sherry were all placed into a group together, Sherry was also heavily involved in the way the queens came for Aiden. But the edit that we got to see only showed Brita being quote-unquote mean to Aiden. We know this because there was an unedited version of season 12 episode 3 that was aired for international viewers, since the networks from other countries were sent the original version of the episode prior to the editing out of Sherry Pie. There's also a lot of people that ended up as collateral damage because of the situation. First, we had the victims that thankfully got somewhat justice by having Sherry's drag career be destroyed, but along with that, we also had a season that was now sort of tainted. even the designers that had helped Sherry Pie with her drag package were in an unfortunate situation where their work couldn't really be celebrated without also celebrating Sherry's run on the show. Even poor Janet the Planet, who had been paired with her for the makeover challenge, probably was super anxious for the weeks leading up to her episode since she didn't know how the public was going to react. But fortunately, Janet the Planet ended up becoming an icon for the series and is one of the fan favorites to return for an all-star season. So now that we've explored how the COVID-19 pandemic affected the airing of season 12 and what it would mean for the queens going forward, there was another aspect that had also been affected by the new lockdown rules. By March 23rd, 2020, the United Kingdom's government's official lockdown procedure had been enacted. This interrupted the filming of Drag Race UK season 2 that was only on episode 4 by the time they had to pause filming indefinitely. I remember hearing the news about this and wondering how they would end up concluding the season, especially after it became clear that social distancing rules were going to be prevalent for at least well into the rest of the year. Part of me also wondered about the queens that had already been eliminated prior to the pause in filming. Was production going to bring them back to compete again, or would they simply just be ignored since they were already eliminated? That being said, it's sort of amazing how UK season 2 was directly affected by the pandemic, because there was a full 7-month pause between the filming of episode 4 and episode 5, a time period that was further explored in a special episode that covered what each of the queens had been doing throughout their time in isolated quarantine. It's this 7-month hiatus that caused there to be some stark changes in the dynamics of most of the queens of the season. For starters, Bimini Bamboo Lash wasn't that big of a contender in the first half of the season. Yet when she came back after quarantine, she was miles ahead more confident than she had previously been, and shined pretty much in every episode she was in moving forward. Something that was contrasted by Lawrence Chaney, who slayed the first half of the season, but it was clear that quarantine had very negatively affected his psyche, as she was nowhere near as confident as before. But one of the things that we also got to learn was that Cherry Valentine was actually a frontline worker by being an emergency mental health support nurse. This was a very draining task for Cherry, because naturally this was a time period that felt hopeless. All that we would read in the news was how infections were rising, thousands of people were dying, and there was no sign of any vaccine being ready anytime soon. Veronica Green, who was supposed to return for episode 5, ended up getting infected with COVID-19, so she was not able to continue filming the season, meaning that there was now one available spot for a returning queen. I honestly really didn't like the way production dealt with the abrupt exit of Veronica Green, because they ended up having the remaining queens vote for who they wanted back in the competition, resulting in Joe Black getting the most votes and returning, while Tina Mandela got the second most votes and Cherry Valentine got none. Like, I don't know, I would have maybe preferred them to just pick a queen at random out of a hat, rather than have the eliminated queens bear the humiliation of getting no votes from their peers, especially after sitting in their hotel room for 2 weeks thinking that they actually had a chance to come back. A part of the season that I tend to always forget about is how Ginny Lemon had a pretty big moment within the series when on episode 4 she landed in the bottom 2, but as soon as the lip sync song started playing, she just walked off the stage and left. When this had originally happened, there was a news article going around that a contestant on Drag Race UK season 2 quits, but swears at the judges and shows them the middle finger. Had Jeannie done that, maybe people would have actually remembered this moment, because it ended up being overshadowed by the big revelation that came minutes after, which was the real reaction of the remaining queens going into the workroom only to be interrupted by a message from Rupaul telling them that the COVID-19 virus had spread all over the world and the government has now called for a shutdown of all productions in an attempt to slow down the spread of the virus. And then it cuts to the queens looking super confused and frightened and asking production if they are serious. This moment honestly brings me chills every time I watch it, because it brings me back to how surreal it was when it seemed that the whole world was ending. So despite the filming of UK season 2 being interrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic, the first season that would be filmed was season 13, that had to follow strict health regulations of mask enforcement and constantly doing COVID testing on each contestant. What's even more impressive about this season is that not only did we get to see some really sickening runway looks from some of the queens, but every drag package that was brought to the show was done through some very limited resources, since due to the lockdown, many businesses weren't operating as they normally do, and even ordering stuff on the mail would take a lot longer than usual. By the time we were deep into the airing of season 13, it had been 1 year since the pandemic started, and vaccines had only recently been approved, so not many of them were available to the public. So while people could see the light at the end of the tunnel, there was still a decent amount of social social distancing regulations internationally that made it very difficult for any of the queens to tour. Instead, they had to focus on building their brand through the digital content realm. Which brings us to All Stars 5, which was the last season hosted by Rupaul to be able to complete filming prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. All Stars 5 was filmed in the summer of 2019, but they had not yet filmed their promos, because for some seasons, sometimes production decides to film the promos months after the season has been concluded, which is why they ended up using the queen's entrance looks as backup for the promo. Although Entertainment Weekly did end up doing a sort of unofficial promo for the season, of which Shea Coulee had my favorite look, but Angina was a close second. Another aspect that was unique to All Stars 5 was that the preseason happened during the height of the Black Lives Matter movement. For this reason, some queens, such as Derek Barry, chose to not upload any photo shoots of their looks because they wanted to pay respects by providing the attention to the issues of racism within the country. The pandemic forced drag queens to be creative with the way they express their art form with the rest of the world. The amount of online shows that were made to try to keep people entertained brought some really iconic moments into existence. It was also the birth of a lot of pandemic queens, with many queens in future seasons admitting that they decided to try out drag because they were so bored during lockdown. During this time period, fans also took it upon themselves to make sure to police if queens were following social distancing regulations, by calling out those that seemed to be violating it, such as the infamous story of Puerto Vallarta, where Silky, Miss Vanjie, and Shangela were caught attending a large social gathering of gay people on a cruise, which Lemon references in her talent show number for UK vs. the World. Along with that, Shea Coulee would end up being criticized for having a party in an apartment with some of her friends where she celebrated her All Stars 5 win. Yet, the fans were always very selective with who they held accountable in terms of violations to social distancing guidelines, such as Alyssa Edwards, who had a large family gathering for Thanksgiving but would go on to not get much flack for it. But that brings another point. The nightlife industry suffered a lot from the lack of social gatherings that were allowed, with many drag queens developing mental health issues because of isolation, financial stressors, and the uncertainty of the future. For example, Veronica Green had undergone a deep depression throughout the summer of 2020. There was a time where she couldn't muster up the motivation to even leave her bed for days at a time. This, coupled with the fact that she'd end up getting COVID and was not able to continue competing on her season, caused her to be in a terrible headspace when preparing to compete on Drag Race UK Season 3. The news of her early elimination broke out months before the season aired, with Awhora, who competed alongside Veronica Green in Season 2, making a shady comment about how Veronica had done in her returning season. It was really unfortunate because you could tell that Veronica herself was not mentally or financially ready to come back for another season, when she hadn't even gotten the chance to tour for her original season because of the pandemic. That, along with the fact that she had virtually no storyline on Season 3, resulted in her early elimination. But 2020 was also the year where many drag queens began to create their own shows outside of Drag Race, like Bob the Drag Queen, Shangela, and Eureka, who aired the first season of We're Here, which would go on to find a lot of success, allowing Layla McQueen to become an Emmy Award winner thanks to her makeup skills. And currently, We're Here has a full 3 seasons. Even Rupaul herself was set to star in a TV show that would help her branch out of the Drag Race format, or at least that's what she thought was going to happen. In May 2018, Netflix greenlit the production of the first season of AJ and the Queen and ordered 10 episodes to be made. By September 2018, the cast had been finalized. The first season was released on Netflix on January 10th, 2020. And like most Netflix shows, all episodes were available at the same time, so that people could binge the whole series. But did they? By March 2020, Netflix canceled the series. AJ and the Queen was largely written by Michael Patrick King, who is the same person who wrote for shows like Sex and the City, and as well as a couple episodes of Will and Grace. So for the most part, his work was pretty subpar, and it kind of seems like AJ and the Queen was his first show where he was truly actively involved in every episode. In the show, Rupaul plays the character of a drag queen named Ruby Red, who would end up being sort of a mentor to the character of a bratty 10-year-old who comes from the slums. So where do we go from here? It seems like the main selling point of the show was to appeal to the Drag Race audience, which makes sense from an outside perspective, but there was also a lack of effort made by the production of the show. It was as if they thought that having Ru Girls make cameos every single episode would be enough to keep the viewer engaged. But if you were someone that has never watched RuPaul's Drag Race and didn't know who any of these people were, then all you were left with was a lazy script and bad acting. There was never an official reason given out by Netflix for why the show canceled the production of season 2. All that we got was a statement from RuPaul via Twitter stating that Netflix did not approve the continuation of the show. RuPaul had also grown accustomed to the cancellation of new shows, since just a couple months prior, his 2019 talk show titled RuPaul had also also been cancelled after just a couple episodes. Also, the person who made the background music for Aging the Queen's soundtrack actually created the opening theme song for the Ellen DeGeneres show, so maybe that's why it got cancelled. Essentially, when the 2020 pandemic hit RuPaul's Drag Race, it forever changed the career paths of many queens. It is this time period where many quarantine drag queens were born, but this was also a time where I think many people relied on the content that the queens from the show were providing for us online. Because without drag queens making entertainment for us, the pandemic would have been a lot more unbearable than it already was. I want to take a moment to thank my patrons. In the Elite Pink Squad, we have Matthew Burns, Gay Uncle, Wendell Norris Realtor, and Hendrix Health TRT. In the Gay Squad, we have our first ever inductee, Ethan Von Queer. And in the Green Squad, we have Azure, Emma Malander, Cayman Ryder Furry, Franny Fishsticks, Edgar Allan Pup, O Nicole, The Only Sean, Soy Pablete, and LP. If you'd like to see your name on the screen, you can support me on Patreon. The link will be in the description. Thank you so much for watching this video. Follow me on Twitter at GreenGayYT for updates on future content. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like this video and comment below what you thought about the topic, and I'll see you guys next time.